Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to the video. I hope you guys are all having a great morning. We got some very exciting information leaked today. Official sources coming out of ESPN are leaking the full Overwatch League contenders rosters, ranging from the New York Excelsior, London Spitfire, Houston Outlaws, Boston Uprising, Florida Mayhem, San Francisco Shock. We got them all, guys. Every single team, every single player is leaked. Today I'm going to let you guys know what every single roster is, who the players are, where they come from, what they've done in their past, and what I think about the team overall and how they will do. So if you guys are interested in hearing that, if you're excited for the news, slap a like on this video and please do consider subscribing, guys. I drop Overwatch League videos daily, whether it's news, updates, whatever, guys. You can get it all here, your daily Overwatch League fix. Now, let's go ahead and hop straight into this video. Let's start off with the Stage 1 Overwatch League champions, the London Spitfires contender roster. First, we have Fusions, the main tank. Now, this guy has a ton of Tier 2 experience. He's played in plenty Go4 ESL Cups and many other qualifiers for major events. Sure, he's never made it to that level, but he does have the Tier 2 experience. Moving on to their flex tank, we have Haffycool, who actually does have a lot of experience. He played with 1-2-3 in Season 1 of Contenders, and Ninjas with Attitude in Season 0 Contenders. And he also had a decent run with Fnatic, where he competed in some live LAN events. Moving on to the DPS players, the first one we have Kib, who played for Laser Kittens in Season 0, briefly on Renegades in NA, and most notably with Reunited in the earlier stages of Overwatch. He has also competed in live LAN events, and most recently, he competed in the Pit, where he took first place with his team, Those Guys. Moving on to the second DPS, we have Craigie, probably one of the most popular players on this team. He played for Team Singularity in Contender Season 0, where his team didn't really do good at all, but he was a standout player despite that. He also played for Team Denmark in the World Cup, as well as the most recent Pit with Kib, where they took first place. Moving on to their supports, London Spitfire actually decided to pick up 3, so they will be fielding a 7-man roster. The first support is Crusade. He placed 3rd through 4th in Season 0 Contenders with Laser Kittens. He also played for Team Netherlands in the World Cup. Moving on to their next support, we have Bak1. He played with Team 1-2-3 in EU Contenders Season 0, where they placed 2nd place, and then in Season 1, where they got 3rd through 4th place. So he has a good amount of experience and competed at LAN. Their last support player is Funny Astro, who is similar to Fusions, doesn't really have any major competition experience, but competed a lot in the Tier 2 scene, in those Go4 ESL Cups and minor qualifiers for major events. And that is the London Spitfire team. They have some notable players with some good experience. I think these guys will do some damage in the EU scene, although it is hard to judge them because I don't really know much about the other EU contenders teams. I think they will do well though. Moving on, we have the New York Excelsior's contender roster, and they were the runner-up of Stage 1, very close to the London Spitfire, and I think in NA, their contenders team is probably going to be one of the best. Let's just go ahead and start off with their most notable player, and probably the most popular and best player on this entire list, Flower. Flower earned a big name worldwide for himself in the World Cup, when he competed for South Korea and pretty much just dismantled everybody in his way. Prior to that, he also competed in Apex with LW Blue, and honestly, there's not much to say about Flower. I think most of you know him by now. He is an incredible player, and he will do so much work for this team. Moving on to their second DPS player, they have Nene, another Korean player who is not as popular as Flower, but this guy is also very good. He played for LW Red in Apex Season 4, and their team was actually improving a lot, and it had a lot to do with Nene's gameplay. This guy was a deadly Tracer and Doomfist player during Season 4. I expect Nene and Flower to be the best DPS duo in the league by far. Moving on to their support players, we have a familiar face, Adam, who competed pretty much his entire career with Cloud9. He competed in Apex Season 2, as well as many LAN events. This guy has pretty much been a staple for the North American scene. He was also on Team USA. He's pretty much done it all, and many of us were surprised when he didn't make it into the Overwatch League, so it's no surprise that he's landed on a stacked roster, along with some big names in the contender scene. Moving on to the second support, we have Goliath, who played with evil geniuses. Now, many people might not know who Goliath is, but I have personal experience playing with and against him. He's a pretty good Zenyatta, I'll tell you guys that. He hits his shots, and he knows how to position properly. As for his competitive history, he played in Contenders qualifiers, Rumble qualifiers. He's played in a lot of major qualifiers, yet his team never really qualified because they weren't that good. He always was a strong point. Moving on to their tanks, we have Midnight playing that flex tank role, who previously was on Rise Nation. He had a decent run with them, and after they disbanded, he had a small run with Selfless in Contenders Season 0, where they looked to qualify for Season 1, but in the end, they did fail. I think Midnight is probably one of the best flex tanks in the league, though, and being paired with a bunch of other great players, I think this New York Excelsior's roster is looking stacked. Moving on to their last player, which is the one that surprised me the most, we have CloneMan16. Now, I know CloneMan is a somewhat popular streamer, and he is a good Reinhardt, of course. He's a good main tank, but he doesn't really have any experience, so he is kind of a question mark for me. I mean, he does have some Tier 2 experience in NA, but compared to the people on his team, he's just really lacking in that area. So I'm definitely looking at CloneMan to prove himself. He could be really good. I mean, obviously, it was probably hard to get on this roster, so props to him for that. But we'll see how he does under pressure and in Contender Season 2. But at the end of the day, I think this New York Excelsior roster is going to be absolutely insane. If not number 1, probably number 2. Moving on to the next team, we have the Houston Outlaws contender roster. Starting off with the main tank, Kaiser. Now, so many people have been wondering, what is Kaiser doing? Why is he not in the Overwatch League? He's such a great main tank. And I think the reason why he didn't make it into the Overwatch League, and don't take offense to this, guys, is just his Winston was not very good. Personally, I have a lot of experience competing against him, specifically when he was on Cloud9 during Contender Season 0. I played multiple matches against him when I was on Kongarna, and we even had a sudden death tiebreaker match on Oasis to decide who would move on to Season 1. And as you guys might know, my team did end up beating Cloud9. We knocked them out of the tournament. But my point is, the main reason we were able to do this is because we abused the factor that it was dive meta and you can't play Reinhardt. We were all over Kaiser. We would force him to make bad jumps and poke him out early in team fights, which would make him make bad decisions. And he never did the right thing for his team. And he was definitely a weakness at the time, and I cannot lie, we exploited that. Maybe his Winston has improved since. Although his Reinhardt is insane, I'm not going to take that away from him. He has done world-class things on that Reinhardt. And if we are in a meta where Reinhardt is the prominent tank, expect Kaiser to be popping off, that's for sure. Now, what's interesting, this team decided to get 2 main tanks. Their second main tank's name is Smurf. Now, I did some research on this guy's name, and I couldn't find much. The capitalization was off for the Smurf guy I found. I'm assuming it's the same one because he does have some good experience, and he is Korean. So basically, the Smurf guy played for Ardiant in the Southeast Asian Pacific region, where they completely dominated the competition, but he was a sub, and he also competed in some Apex qualifiers, but didn't make it into the actual league. So interesting pickup here, not too much I could find out on this guy. We'll see how good he is. Maybe they got him because they're going to run Kaiser on Reinhardt and Smurf on Winston. That is a possibility. So we'll just have to see how that unfolds. Now, moving on to their DPS players, this team opted to actually get 3 DPS players along with 2 main tanks. So they're looking to be one of the biggest rosters in Contenders. Starting off with Keller, he played for Tempo and Selfless briefly early on in his career. Other than that, he just has some Tier 2 experience here and there. I've known him for a while. He was always on ladder, getting ranked high every single season, working his butt off to be one of the best in the scene. I'm not sure why he never broke out of the Tier 2 scene into the Tier 1 scene, but here he is on the Houston Outlaws contenders roster, and we'll see what he can do. Moving on to the second DPS, we have Sharp, who competed in the Tier 2 European scene, similar to some of the players on the London Spitfire team. He's played in the ESL Go 4 Cups, but other than that, not really anything major, so we'll have to see what he can do as well. And then their last DPS player, we have Rena VX, who most notably played for You Guys Get Paid briefly, and other than that, he's just bounced around the Tier 2 scene for a long time, making his own teams, competing for different teams, and he never really broke out into the Tier 1 scene either, so definitely getting an opportunity along with his other 2 DPS players to prove himself. We'll have to see what they can do. Now, moving on to their supports, where I think they are a little bit stronger, they have Gray, who played in European Overwatch contenders and placed 3rd through 4th in Season 0, so definitely has some good experience there. I think Gray will add a lot to this team. I've played with him personally in scrims, and I think he's a strong player. And their second support player is Aid, a Korean support player who played for ROX Orcus and then moved on to GC Busan. He was a sub for GC Busan, but he was there, so he does have the experience and has been involved in the infrastructure of world-class teams. And lastly, we have their flex tank, Vol, from LG Evo, who has a pretty good amount of experience. He competed throughout all of 2017 with LG Evo. They played in Season 0 contenders. They played in multiple Alien Monthly Melees, as well as the Rumbles. He basically competed in almost every single premier event besides Season 1 of contenders. I have personally played against Vol a lot. He's a very flexible player, whether he's on DPS or the flex tank role, which I do think he is best on that diva role. So good pickup for the Houston Outlaws there. And that's basically it for them. Overall, I think they do have some good pieces. Depending on how their DPS perform, I think they can be a strong team. Next, let's move on to the Boston Uprising contenders roster. First, we have their main tank, Guardian, who competed in the Apex Challenger scene with ROX Orcus and Lunatic High second. He was never really able to make it into the actual league, but he does have a lot of experience trying to get there, and I've heard a lot of good things about this guy, and I expect him to definitely be a good pickup. I think the Boston Uprising guys have a good eye for talent, and I think they're going to have a strong roster because of that. Next, we have another tank, which is OGE. OGE, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, it's OGE. He actually played main tank for Conbox in Apex Season 4. So that's some good experience there. I've as well heard a lot of good things about this guy, so seeing that they've secured two really strong main tanks is very interesting. And let's go ahead and move on to their DPS. We have Nero from Toronto eSports. I have personally competed against this guy for the past couple of months. I've watched a lot of scrims of him. He's a very good DPS player. He can flex that Genji, that Pharah, just basically prominent on all of the projectile heroes. I expect him to do a lot of work for this team. And moving on to the next one, we have Dalton, who is their other DPS and specifically plays the Tracer role. This guy is a very good Tracer. Right now, I'd say he's one of the best in the Tier 2 scene. Obviously, with Nene moving over and a lot of this Korean talent coming in, he might not be the absolute best, but before all these transports came into NA, Dalton was definitely the best Tracer in the Tier 2 scene. Now moving on to their support player, we have Moth, who also competed with Toronto eSports and has a lot of experience playing with Nero and Dalton. I am surprised to see that the full Toronto eSports team did not get picked up as a whole. I know they were trialing as a whole with multiple teams. Maybe some players wanted better money and they went other places. They just had good offers. Who knows exactly? But this team does look strong. They only have 5 players so far leaked, and we'll just have to see who the rest of the players are. They are lacking a flex tank and second support. Moving on to the next team, we have the Florida Mayhem contenders roster. And starting off with the DPS players, we have Mikey A, who played for Team UK in the World Cup, as well as C9 EU in Contenders Season 1, Ninjas with Attitude in Season 0 Contenders, and he had a brief run on FaZe early on in his career. I think he's improved a lot since he started, and he always shines at LAN, especially that World Cup performance. It was absolutely amazing for Team UK. He popped off, so I expect a lot of things from Mikey A. Moving on to their next DPS/flex, I'm not really sure how they're going to run this, but first we have ZZA from Arc 6, who played that flex DPS role. He was on like Pharah, Soldier, Genji. He'd play random things for Arc 6. Mainly was known for his Pharah though. He absolutely carried Arc 6 during that time when they defeated Selfless and that famous game where Defran threw and jumped off the map on Oasis. Arc 6 was honestly really one of the first NA teams that learned how to run that Pharah Mercy properly and counter just the hell out of Defran and Selfless. So hats off to ZZA for his Pharah. It's absolutely insane. That's why I'm a little confused why he's listed as a tank here. And then next we have Krems, who is listed as flex. I'm assuming that this might be a little messed up. Krems did play for Laser Kittens during Season 0 Contenders, and he also has a lot of Tier 2 experience in the European scene. But I am a little interested to see what heroes that Krems and ZZA end up playing. Now let's move on to Moopy, who is their main tank. And honestly, I don't know anything about this guy. He just popped up out of nowhere about a month ago. He was competing with that Rise Nation team that was being put together before they got picked apart by these contenders teams. And prior to that, I just honestly never heard of this guy. He has basically no Tier 2 experience. He hasn't really competed in any tournaments. So I am a little surprised to see him here. He's a complete wild card for me. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. We'll just have to wait and see. Moving on to Paintbrush, who is their support player, has a lot of Tier 2 NA experience, competed in a lot of the AG Weekly Cups. I mean, honestly, I would consider that kind of Tier 3. never really competed in any minor qualifiers, not too much experience coming out of Paintbrush. And moving on to their second support, we have Moher, or Mohr, not sure how to pronounce the name, Mohr, who, just like Paintbrush, has competed in like the tier 2-ish, tier 3-ish scene, doesn't have too much experience competing in like minor qualifiers or major qualifiers. And honestly, this Florida Mayhem team, in my opinion, looks like they're lacking. They do have Mikey A, who has performed very well in LAN, but his online performance is very questionable. He's like the complete opposite of Logic's, and ZZA is honestly like the only player that really stands out to me. And depending on how they're running him, they have him listed as tank, so I don't know. This roster is definitely very confusing for me, and they have a lot to prove. We'll just have to see what they can do. Florida Mayhem, I don't know how good of a job you guys did here, but again, we'll have to see. I don't want to count them out yet. Moving on to the San Francisco Shock Contenders roster, we have at main tank Butcher, who played for Kongdu Panthera and Kongdu Uncia during Apex seasons 1 through 3. So this guy has a lot of experience competing in Apex, one of the most experienced guys on this entire list of all the teams. So I'm expecting a lot to come out of Butcher. That is a good pickup from San Francisco. And moving on to the flex tank, we have Smex, who played for You Guys Get Paid in Season 0 NA. He also played in Season 1 Contenders with Team Singularity and also with Team UK in the World Cup. I've heard a lot of great things about Smex. I'm pretty sure this guy had offers from a lot of these Contenders teams. So seeing that he went to San Francisco Shock shows me that this team either must be really good or they're offering something really good. And I think looking at the roster, they do look very strong. So good choice by Smex here. And I think he'll be one of the best flex tanks in Contenders. Now let's go ahead and talk about their DPS players. First we have Damon, Deemin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one correct either. He's going to be playing DPS, more of that tracer role. He played for Kongdu Uncia with Butcher during Apex Season 3, and then he played with Uncia in Season 4 as well. So this guy also has a lot of Apex experience. Very good pickup there. Let's go ahead and move on to the next DPS player, which is Stratus, who competed with Rocket eSports in the Tier 2 scene. He played in some major qualifiers, never really got too far. He played in some minor ones where he did get far. Rocket eSports did win one season of Open. I'm not sure which one, but they did win one. So he does have some decent amount of experience, and I've heard a lot of good things about him. Now let's move on to the support players, where I think they're also very strong. Starting off with Rob420, who competed with LG Evil. Similar to Vol, he has a lot of experience, competed throughout 2017 in Contenders Season 0, Alien Monthly Melees, Rumble tournaments. So he's got that experience. I think he's a great player. And let's move on to their last player, which is Fozix on the main support role, who competed for Envision. And I competed a lot against Fozix over his career, and this guy improved so much. I think I've talked about this guy before in one of my videos, but Fozix just improved. Like, the guy, and like this, I'm not trying to bash him, but when he first started, he trialed for Kongarna, and he wasn't good at all, guys. Like, we didn't really consider him. Then he went and joined Envision. And Envision was kind of a joke of the Tier 2 scene in early 2017. They were not good at all. My team completely smashed them. But throughout 2017, him and Envision improved so much. And going into Season 1 Contenders, they surprised so many people. And I think a lot of this was due to the fact that Fozix was very good at shot calling. And he's moving over to that main support role now. And I think he's even going to be better at shot calling now, since he's on an easier role to do it rather than the flex support. So overall, I think San Francisco Shock has a very strong roster. They're up there with the Boston Uprising and New York Excelsior, so I expect them to do very well. And let's go ahead and move on to the very last team, which is the Los Angeles Gladiators Contenders roster. Starting off with their main tank, we have Panker, who did play for Toronto eSports. I knew he was going to make it. I think a lot of Contenders rosters were trying to get this guy. He played for Kongdu Uncia and Apex for Seasons 1 through 3, and then he had a good run with Toronto eSports and Contender Season 0, as well as a lot of the Tier 2 scene after Contenders, so no surprise that he made it. Moving on to their flex tank, we have Gods, who has a very long history in Overwatch eSports. He started off playing in beta, competed with LG/NRG. He went to the Overwatch Open and the APAC Premier, the very first one. Then he competed with C9 in Apex Season 2, as well as Contender Season 0, mini Alien Monthly Melees. I mean, the guy has a lot of experience. He's played so many roles, and he's going to be on DPS for these guys, which is interesting. He's flexed so much, and it's hard to tell what he's the best at. He is all around just such a good player, and if he does focus on like a couple heroes, he can be deadly. Moving on to their other like flex tank / DPS, we have Blase, who does have a decent amount of tier 2 experience in NA. He competed in minor and major qualifiers with a bunch of random teams. He's never really been on a breakout team in the tier 1 scene though, so he does have a decent amount to prove here. And let's go ahead and talk about the last DPS, which we have Corey, who is known for his great aim. He played for Evil Geniuses. Like I said with Goliath, they never really got too far, but he was one of the very strong players on that roster, so it's no surprise that he made it into Season 2. He also did have a brief run with Renegades where he did sub into some games during Season 1 contenders. He played alright. It was kind of a weird situation, can't blame him for not playing the best, but let's go ahead and move on to their support players, where we have Rolf, also another very experienced player in the scene. He competed first with Method, where he went to the Overwatch Open, then C9, where he went to Apex Season 2, along with Canada and World Cup twice, and tons of monthly melees and rumbles. The guy has a ton of experience along with Gods. And let's move on to the second support, where we have Pooks, who also has a ton of experience. He competed with NRG in the Apex, as well as Overwatch Open and APAC Premier. Then he competed with my team, Kungarna, in Overwatch Rumbles, Contender Season 0 and Season 1. So this team has a lot of veterans and a lot of experience. I expect them to be very, very strong. And that's basically it for these 7 contenders teams, guys. Let me know down in the comments who you guys think will be the best. I think there's a lot of good talent spread around all of these teams, so I expect a lot of great competition in Contenders Season 2, and I'm definitely excited to see it kick off. And if you guys love Overwatch League and daily news, be sure to subscribe to my channel because I upload every single day with the most updated information straight to you guys. And thank you for watching. I really do appreciate all the support. I've received so many subs in the past 2 days. It's absolutely crazy. Welcome to the channel, guys. Follow my social medias. I'm out of here. Peace.